Have you ever stopped to think about why some coincidences seem too impossible to be just chance? That moment when you think of someone and the person calls you seconds later, or when you dream about a specific situation and it happens the next day. It seems like the universe is trying to tell you something, right? It seems like there's something bigger orchestrating these unlikely encounters. But what if I told you that you're asking the wrong question? What if the real mystery isn't why these coincidences happen, but why you think they're so special? Richard Feynman, one of the most brilliant physicists of the 20th century, had a totally different way of looking at this. And when you understand his reasoning, your mind gets turned inside out. What you're about to discover in the next few minutes isn't just about probability or mathematics. It's about how your own brain tricks you every day, creating patterns where there's only randomness, finding meaning where there's only statistics. Feynman showed us that the universe doesn't need any special explanation for coincidences, and understanding this completely changes how you see each sign you think you're receiving. Get ready, because after this video, you'll never look at a coincidence the same way again. We'll start with a simple license plate and end up understanding why the extraordinary might just be in your head, not in the reality out there. I was driving the other day and looked at the car in front of me. The license plate said something like ABC 1234, nothing special, right? But then a thought came to me. What's the probability of me being exactly in this place at this exact moment, looking at this specific plate? Think with me. Among all the millions of cars that could be in front of me, among all the possible combinations of letters and numbers, among all the moments of the day I could be on that road, the chance of seeing exactly that plate at that precise instant is absurdly small. Maybe 1 in millions, maybe even 1 in billions if we take everything into account. Seems extraordinary, doesn't it? Like, wow, the universe conspired for me to see exactly that plate. But wait a second, let's turn this reasoning upside down, because that's where it gets really interesting. What would be the probability of me driving and not seeing any license plate? 0, obviously. I had to see some plate, right? And any plate I saw would be equally unlikely before it happened. The plate ABC 1234 is no more special than XYZ 9876 or any other combination. They all have the same minuscule probability of appearing at that specific moment. The whole trick is in the timing of our surprise. We choose to be impressed after the event has already happened. It's like flipping a coin 1,000 times, it landing in a specific way, let's say heads, tails, heads, heads, tails, and so on, and then shouting, wow, what are the chances of that specific sequence happening? Well, the sequence had to be something, and any sequence would be equally unlikely. We only think it's special because it's the one that happened and we decided to pay attention to it. Have you noticed how we do this all the time? We look back and say, what an incredible coincidence, but only because we decided to highlight that specific event among hundreds of others that we completely ignore. If I had seen a different plate, I might not have even thought about it. But because for some reason that plate caught my attention, maybe the letters formed something funny or the numbers had a pattern, I decided it was special. The universe didn't decide anything. I decided. My brain made that choice after the facts. And look, this isn't a flaw of ours. It's exactly how our mind works, and it works for a very good reason. Our brain is constantly looking for what's relevant, what deserves attention, what might mean something important. But this same ability that helps us survive also tricks us when it comes to understanding probabilities and coincidences. We take a random event, put a spotlight on it, and suddenly it seems magical, special, destined to happen. But before putting that spotlight on it, it was just one more among infinite possible events. Every time you're surprised by a coincidence, do this mental exercise with me. How many other things could have happened at that moment that you simply wouldn't notice or wouldn't find special? The answer is always thousands, maybe millions. The coincidence you noticed is just one among an ocean of possibilities, and you only fished it out because your brain decided it was worthwhile. The universe isn't sending signals. You're choosing which events to consider signals and doing it after they've already happened. This changes everything about how we understand these moments that seem magical or significant. Now you might be wondering, why do we do this? Why does our brain insist on finding meaning where there might not be any? The answer is back there in our evolutionary history, and it's fascinating when you stop to think about it. Our ancestors lived in a dangerous world. A noise in the leaves could be just the wind, or it could be a predator about to attack. Those who ignored these signs ended up becoming dinner for some beast. but those who paid attention, who saw patterns even when sometimes they didn't exist, survived to pass their genes forward. So we, descendants of these paranoid survivors, inherited a brain that's always looking for connections, always trying to predict what comes next, always finding patterns. The problem is that this system never turns off. It worked perfectly well when the question was life or death on the African savannah. Better to see 10 imaginary lions than to ignore a real lion. But now, in this modern world full of random information, license plates, phone calls, and dreams, the same mechanism fires all the time unnecessarily. Your brain keeps looking for tigers in the leaves, even when you're just looking at random data. Let me tell you an example that everyone has experienced. You dream about a person you haven't seen in a long time. The next day, that person calls you. Wow. Telepathic connection, premonition. Your subconscious picking up vibrations from the universe? No, wait. Let's really look at this. How many times have you dreamed about people and they didn't call? Dozens? Hundreds? You probably don't even remember because it didn't catch your attention. How many times have people called you without you having dreamed about them before? Again, it happens all the time and you don't even notice. But that one time when the two events coincided, your memory stored that like it was gold. Your brain is basically a video editor that only keeps the interesting scenes and throws away all the rest. You have thousands of thoughts per day about thousands of people. You receive dozens of calls, messages, emails per week. The probability that a thought and an event overlap at some point is actually quite high. But you only archive in memory when this happens, creating the false impression that it's rare and special. Think of it like throwing darts in the dark. You throw hundreds of darts in all directions, most don't hit anything interesting. But when one hits a target, you turn on the light and shout, "Look at that incredible aim." Only you conveniently forget the other 99 darts scattered across the wall. That's exactly what we do with coincidences. We record the hits and erase the misses from memory. And here's something interesting. The more attention you pay to these coincidences, the more they seem to happen. Not because the universe started sending more signals, but because you activated this pattern detector even more. You start noticing things that used to go unnoticed. Bought a red car and suddenly see red cars everywhere? The cars were always there. You just started paying attention to them. Your brain created a filter, and now everything that passes through this filter seems significant. This doesn't mean we're dumb or deluded. It means we're human, equipped with a brain that evolved to keep us alive, not necessarily to make us understand statistics. This same brain that sees too many patterns is also capable of creating art, music, science. The question is learning when to trust these patterns and when to question them. And coincidences? Well, coincidences are exactly the kind of thing that this overstimulated detector of ours loves to transform into something bigger than they really are. Now let's take a step further and look at the big picture, because when you really understand the numbers involved, things become even clearer. Think with me. How many people exist on the planet right now? About 8 billion. Each of these people lives, what? About 70, 80 years if they're lucky. That gives about 25,000 days of life. And in each of these days, how many things happen to you? How many people do you see? How many thoughts pass through your head? How many decisions do you make? How many small and large events make up your 16 waking hours? Thousands, easily thousands of events per day. Now multiply all of this. 8 billion people, each living thousands of days, each day containing thousands of events. You're looking at a number so absurdly large of opportunities for coincidences that my brain can't even process it properly. We're talking about trillions and trillions of chances for something unlikely to happen. And you know what that means? It means the unlikely becomes inevitable. And let me rephrase this in a more direct way. If you have an event that has a 1 in a million chance of happening, it seems super rare, right? But if you have a million opportunities for that event to occur, suddenly the probability of it not happening at least once is what becomes small. It's pure mathematics. The law of large numbers isn't a philosophical theory. It's a direct consequence of how probabilities work when you have many attempts. I'll give you a concrete example. Have you heard of the birthday paradox? Put 23 random people in a room. The chance of 2 of them having a birthday on the same day is more than 50%, with just 23 people. It seems wrong. It seems like it should take a lot more people, but the math doesn't lie. The reason is that you're not comparing each person with a specific date, you're comparing all people with each other. The number of comparisons grows very quickly, and with it, the probability of a coincidence. Now, extrapolate this to real life. You're not just comparing birthdays, you're comparing dreams with phone calls, thoughts with casual encounters, wishes with outcomes, numbers with patterns. You're making millions of comparisons without even realizing it. And with each comparison, there's a small chance of coincidence. When you add up all these tiny chances over an entire lifetime, the end result is that everyone will experience several impressive coincidences. It's not luck, it's not destiny, it's not the universe sending messages, it's just mathematics doing what mathematics does. What would really be strange, what would really require a special explanation, would be if you lived an entire life and never experienced any remarkable coincidence. That would indeed be bizarre. It would be like flipping a coin 1,000 times and never getting two heads in a row. Technically possible, but so unlikely that you'd start suspecting there's something wrong with the coin. Similarly, a life without coincidences would be evidence that something very strange is happening, not the opposite. People usually think of coincidences as rare events that need explanation, but when you understand the scale we're operating on, you realize that the rarity of an individual event means nothing in the face of the gigantic volume of opportunities. Each person on Earth is a probabilistic experiment happening in real time, testing thousands of hypotheses per day without even knowing it. With 8 billion experiments running simultaneously, of course, results that seem impossible will appear. But even knowing all this, even understanding the mathematics behind it, coincidences still seem magical when they happen to us, don't they? And this brings us to a crucial part I want you to understand: the role of memory in this whole story. Our brain isn't a video recorder that faithfully records everything. It's more like a biased journalist who chooses which stories to tell and which to forget. And guess what kind of story it loves to tell? Those that confirm what we already believe, those that seem meaningful, those that have a surprising ending. Coincidences fit perfectly into this category. Let me show you how this works in practice. You think about an old friend on Tuesday morning, he doesn't call. Wednesday you think about him again, nothing. Thursday you don't even remember him. Friday you think about him quickly and he sends you a message at the end of the day. Boom! Incredible coincidence, telepathic connection. But wait, let's rewind the tape. You thought about him at least 3 times that week, and only one of those times resulted in contact. That's 33% accuracy, which is actually pretty bad. But your brain doesn't archive it that way. It takes that Friday, puts a golden frame around it, and discards everything that came before. The trick is even more sophisticated than it seems. It's not just that you forget the misses. Your brain actively rewrites the narrative to make the coincidence seem more impressive. You remember thinking about your friend on Friday, but was it really before the message or right after receiving it? Memory is too flexible to trust at this level of detail. Sometimes you receive the message, it makes you think about the person, and seconds later your brain has already reorganized the sequence of events in your head, putting the thought before the fact. This reminds me of experiments they did with people in casinos. They bet on roulette numbers and are then asked how many times they got it right. People consistently overestimate their hits and underestimate their misses. They're not consciously lying. They genuinely remember more victories than they actually had, because victories are emotionally striking and defeats are quickly forgotten or minimized. The same mechanism operates with coincidences. Have you ever stopped to think about how many friends you have? Acquaintances, colleagues, relatives, people you've met throughout your life? Probably hundreds. Now think, how many times a day does some random thought about one of these people pass through your head? Many. And how many of these people contact you over the course of a week? Several as well. The question isn't whether there will be an overlap between thinking about someone and that person getting in touch. The question is when it will happen. Because with so many people and so many thoughts, it's statistically guaranteed that it will happen regularly. But your brain doesn't do this honest accounting. It keeps a file of coincidences and throws away the non-events. Worse still, it connects events that have no relationship at all. You thought about your friend on Thursday, he called on Saturday. Wait, 2 days later still counts as a coincidence? Your brain says yes, because it's looking to confirm, not refute. If it were a week later, maybe it would still count. A month? Well, that would be pushing it, but you get the point. The time window we consider valid for a coincidence is always generous enough to capture events, but never applied with scientific rigor. Think of it as a filter that only lets one thing through: confirmations. All the times you thought about people and nothing happened, filtered All the times people contacted you without you thinking about them, filtered. All the times you almost thought about someone but thought about something else, filtered. What remains is a super selected set of events that seem to form a pattern, but are actually just the survivors of a brutal screening process that discarded 99% of the data. Now let's get to the heart of the matter, to the part that really changes how you see the world. Everything we've talked about so far leads us to a conclusion that may seem disappointing at first, but is actually liberating when you really absorb it. The universe isn't doing anything with coincidences. It doesn't allow, doesn't prohibit, doesn't orchestrate, doesn't send signals. The universe simply exists, operating according to physical laws, and coincidences are just inevitable statistical consequences of a gigantic system with an absurd number of variables interacting all the time. It doesn't need any special explanation, no mystical force, no hidden purpose. It's just statistics happening. Think about a die. You roll it and it lands on number 4. Someone asks, why did it land on 4? Well, you can talk about the angle you held the die, the force you applied, air resistance, friction with the table, the distribution of mass inside the die. But deep down, the real answer is because it had to land on some number, and this was the one that happened given all those initial conditions. 4 is no more special than 6 or 2. There's no deep cosmic reason for it being 4. It was just the result of basic physics operating on a moving object. Coincidences are exactly like that. You were in that place because you made a series of decisions. That person was there because they made another series of decisions. The two paths crossed. Why? Because they had to cross somewhere or not cross. And in this case, they crossed. It doesn't need more explanation than that. It doesn't need to invoke destiny, signs from the universe, cosmic energy, nothing. The physics of your decisions and the other person's decision led to this encounter, the same way the physics of the die led to 4. What makes this so hard to accept is that we humans are meaning-making machines. We need things to mean something. A random event doesn't satisfy our mind. We want narrative, we want purpose, we want to feel like we're part of something bigger. So when a coincidence happens, our first instinct is to ask, what does this mean? Instead of, what's the probability of this happening given the number of opportunities? One question is emotional, the other is mathematical. Both are valid for different things, but only one of them actually explains coincidences. The reality is that you can roll a die 1,000,000 times and you'll never need a special explanation for any individual result. Each roll is just physics operating. Each number that falls is equally probable, assuming a fair die, and equally without special meaning. But if after 1,000,000 rolls you look back, you'll find incredible sequences. Maybe 5 sixes in a row at some point. Maybe a perfect alternation between even and odd numbers for 20 rolls. These sequences will exist somewhere in your data, not because the universe wanted to create patterns, but because with enough attempts, patterns naturally emerge from randomness. Your life is this die experiment, only with billions of dice being rolled simultaneously, each with thousands of faces, and you paying selective attention to some results and ignoring others. The extraordinary isn't in the objective reality out there. The extraordinary is in your brain, in the filter you apply, in the attention you direct, in the memory you form, in the meaning you attribute. The coincidence that left you speechless is extraordinary for you in your subjective experience, but objectively it's just another event in an infinite sea of possible events. And look, this doesn't make life less interesting or less beautiful. Actually, it makes it more so, because you don't need to wait for signs from the universe to make decisions. You don't need to interpret coincidences as messages about what to do. You're free to create your own meaning, make your own choices, build your own narrative without being hostage to superstitions or exaggerated readings of random events. The universe isn't guiding you, but it's also not abandoning you. It simply is, and you simply are, and everything that happens is the result of natural laws operating on matter and energy, including the matter and energy that make up you. So the next time a coincidence happens, ask yourself, how many other things could have happened that I would simply ignore? How many times did I think about this and nothing happened? Understanding this sets you free. You stop looking for external signs and start trusting your own choices. You stop attributing cosmic meaning to random events and create your own meaning. Now I want to know, will you still interpret coincidences the same way? Tell me in the comments the most impressive coincidence that's ever happened to you. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to keep exploring how physics explains things that seem magical. See you in the next one.